TIFU by exercising my white privilege. By user Pixel Paladin. My partner and I had an extra $80 burning a hole in our pockets after paying bills, buying groceries, and putting a little money into savings for a rainy day. So we decided to have a treat and spring for some alcohol. I drove the 9 miles into town and browsed the selection. There was a lot of the standard beer, wine, and alcoholic sodas like Mike's Lemonade, etc. Right up in front, though, there was a freezer full of cute little alcohol slush packets and a bunch of different flavors like Blue Hawaiian, raspberry, and so forth on sale for $1 and some change. Being a thrifty drunkard, I grabbed a basket full of sweet booze and went to the register to check out. I'm not a youngster, I don't look young either. I've got a fringe of pure white along the edges of my beard, so I was surprised when the cashier asked to see my ID. What I intended to say was, I'm surprised you need to see my card. What with the white hairs here as I gestured at my face. Instead, what came out was, you don't need to card me. I'm white. The way I gasped. I tried to explain what I actually meant, and it was the cringiest thing to ever come out of my mouth. I had to choke down laughter the rest of the time I was in the store and sat in my car cracking up for like 3 minutes. Till, Doctor, I tried to invoke my powers as a white dude to avoid being carded. Edit.
I removed a term some people took offense to.
TIFU by accidentally revealing my student's paternity during a genetics lesson. By user Vincent. I'm a student supplemental instructor at my university for genetics. My job basically revolves around reinforcing concepts already taught by the professor as an optional side course. Earlier this semester, while going over parental blood typing, I got to explaining how having a blood type works as opposed to AO half a type A or type A in little genetics Punnett squares. I asked if anyone knew their parents' blood type to the class, and someone raised their hand and told me that his father is Abe and his mother is type A and that he is type O, which is impossible. I went through with the activity for some reason and ended up having to explain to him that the only way this can happen is if his mother is AO and his father was type O. He now didn't know if he's adopted or if his mom cheated on his dad. After the session, I walked over to the genetics professor's office and confirmed with her that this is impossible, and she said she'd be mortified to try to tell him the truth behind that and hoped he was misremembering. Fast forward to today, a friend of his updated me and said that he confirmed the blood types, has kept it to himself, and figured out he wasn't adopted. I ruined how he sees his mother, and I kind of feel guilty about it. At least he did well on his exam egg. Tell, Doctor, I teach genetics, and a student of mine found out that his mother cheated on his father. He confirmed it, and I potentially ruined a family dynamic. TIFU by wetting the bed of a guy I really like. By user Just Throw Away. The title. I was nervous to go on a date with this cute guy, to which I made the genius decision to drink more than I should have on our dinner date. This resulted in me getting very inebriated very quickly. After he invited back to his place where I passed out in his bed, I awoke to an unmistakable sensation. Myself, his bed, and the pants he let me wear to bed was soaked in pee. I freaked out on the inside, but figured it was probably best to wake him up and come clean. He was actually nice about it. Changed the sheets and gave me some clothes to change into. He said he would like to see me again, but I can't tell if he actually meant it or if he's just being nice in retrospect. It could have been worse, but I'm so embarrassed about it. If anyone has any similar stories to make me feel less like an idiot, I would greatly appreciate it. Tell, Doctor, I had a little too much to drink on the first date. Slept over at a guy's house and wet his bed. TIFU by expanding my toddler's vocabulary. By user Let's Go Iowa. My little guy is not quite 2 and is, as most toddlers are, obsessed with doing what Daddy does. Daddy does dishes, I like doing dishes too. Daddy does laundry, I must help wash or dryer too. I was letting him help with the dishes last night because it was keeping him happy while my wife rested to deal with a migraine. I figured it was a good experience for him to splash around a bit. I zoned out for just a second, and suddenly I see a flash of glass. I instantly realized, oh crap, he got the fragile shot glass, and asked him, can Daddy have that? He sort of tossed it at me, which I wasn't expecting, so it fell into the sink and bounced around while I tried to nab it. To my horror, it fell into the garbage disposal just perfectly so that it would be a bitch to take out. My brain fused goddammit and fucking it bypassed my PG detector, so I just kind of yelled, God fuck it. I am not proud. I try my best to avoid that. Little dude looked at me with the most inquisitive eyes. He looked back at the trash obliterator, 9000, with the glass in it. He asked so innocently, God fuck it. while pointing clearly at the most unfuckable device known to man unless you want to blend your penis. I gotta admit, it caught me off guard, so I couldn't help but laugh. He's a comedian, so he knows it was funny. So he got a big smile and kept repeating it. I know he will bring that up again someday when it is least appropriate. Tell, doctor. I blurted out something unholy, and now my child thinks the Lord wants to stick his dick in the garbage disposal. TIFU, by offering my dying friend my spare bedroom. By user trapped a mechanic. So I've kind of posted about this in other threads, specifically on our Ask Reddit, but by some users' request, I will do my best to fully relay this entire tale up to the current point, as well as provide as much context I'm able, and will provide missing context if asked in comments. A friend of mine of 4 years drank himself into liver failure and his wife cheated on him, so I offered him a free room to try and put his life back together, and I was repaid for the thought with a divorce of my own. But honestly, it's probably not that bad. Part 1. Context. Me and my wife have been together since early 2014 and married in late 2017. We have been through much together, including 2 extended deployments, one of which was 10.5 months long. We have traveled the world together, lived on both coasts of the US, and despite much of our struggles and how things eventually went down, I was always convinced we would work as a team to overcome any issues. The friend in question was, largely, an online friend. We met playing an MMO during COVID, and we quickly formed a very tight-knit but small community that were very close, that included me, my wife, my friend, his wife, and 4 other friends. COVID was a wild time, and I was surprised how easy it was to form friends in this group, and we kept in touch as a whole, even once quarantine had ended and most of us had moved on from that particular game. This was a group that, while it started online, we have met most of these people several times and had vacations to spend time together and just hang out. Part 2. His problems. Fast forward to about January of 2024.
My buddy from here on out I will refer to as Z. And for a quick ad, I will refer to my wife as D. Contacts us to tell us his condition is dire, and he has been diagnosed with stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver as a consequence of his extensive drinking.
Shaken, we quickly charter a flight out to visit. Within a week, we're staying with him and his wife and his roommate and a couple members of his family who are taking care of him. This man is bloated, yellow, and probably about 350 pounds now. We are worried, but stay supportive and positive that help can be found, especially since he seems keen on changing his lifestyle for the better. Some of his family started GoFundMe that we donate to, and many of the people in our gaming circle who have grown close also donate several $1,000s. One member of our raid team donated 10. You never know who's stealth rich on the internet, I guess. Me and several other friends discussed the possibilities of helping him get on disability, and even getting ourselves tested as compatible living donors. Sad, but hopeful. We depart about a week later and stay in constant touch. About a month later, I'm getting a call from one of our mutuals letting me know that, hey, so I may have goofed up, and tells me how Z's wife had visited him and had a 3-way with him and his wife. I am obviously irate at this and turn to back Z up with comments like so much for in sickness and in health. I do what I can to stay supportive, and my wife, D, also makes it a point to stay in touch with him as he has found himself banished to the couch of his apartment, not even allowed to sleep in his own bed, and frequently uncomfortable even being in his bedroom, to use the C. I'm not particularly rich, but I am not poor either. I served in the military and have a high VIA rating, which means a constant income, and have a steady job and a couple side gigs that pay well enough. My love language, in many ways, is gift giving. I pride myself on being able to pick a good gift, even if it's a little early for an occasion such as a B-Day or Christmas, and will often pull the trigger on something if it means a lot or I think it will help. In this case, my brother was selling an old Steam Deck because he wanted a new old model. So I figured 2 birds, 1 stone, and buy the Steam Deck off him and send it to Z so we can still game together. In the intervening months, Z and D start playing games that I have no interest in, Disney Dreamlight Valley, but I am happy to play other games and hang out and chat. Really, nothing seems amiss, but since his banishment, me and my wife are both pushing for him to come and take up the spare bedroom we have in our home. Soon enough, I buy him a plane ticket and he arrives with little more than the clothes on his back and we take him in. No cost other than the expectation that he might help around the house a bit. He was a chef, so having a cook and someone to help clean was ideal for me, who often did not have the time or energy to handle these tasks as thoroughly as I would like. Part 3. The incident. Now, I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but there's not much to be said about the time between. My wife worked part-time hours, and when she did go to work, she'd have him tag along just so he wouldn't sit and stew with bad thoughts at the house alone. I will admit that throughout this entire ordeal, I have had several times where my brain tried to warn me, but I ignored all of those signs because I trusted him. But more importantly, I trusted her with my life. One new frequent argument I found myself having with her was she would fall asleep on the couch. And when I finally tried to go to bed, I'd do my best to wake her and drag her upstairs. These became extremely frequent occurrences, and I expressed to her how frustrated I was that I had to fight with her just to come to bed so we could sleep. Mind you, this is not even about sex. Often I'm taking her to bed at Anna and I work at 7, so I really just wanted her to be sleeping in the bed. Hell, one time I started catching the vibes that the longer I sat and waited for her to be ready to go upstairs, she just never would be, because they were waiting for me to leave so they could talk in hushed tones. On that particular night, I went upstairs alone with her finally awake, and she did not join me for another half hour. Finally, the day arrives. It's Sunday.
We are all downstairs hanging out. One of their newest habits I can't really stand but just dealt with is that she'd sit and crochet while he doom-scrolled or strummed on a guitar I bought him and listened to music videos on YouTube endlessly.
Eventually, I grow weary and give my wife a kiss and tell her I'm going to go upstairs and play some Go-To for a bit. About an hour passes, and she enters the game room and tells me I'm uncomfortable. I really need to talk to you. Oh, you're dying. As she entered the room, I immediately turned face to talk to her and disregard the game, but she decided that my char was more important than what was about to happen. So she of course warns me. We step into the bedroom and close the door. You're gonna hate me, she says through tears. Me and Z kissed. At this point, my brain short circuits and I recall one of my first thoughts being, oh Lord, here we go. Then just a general desire to not be a part of this conversation. Shock sets in almost immediately. Still with a healthy dose of denial, I talked to her about what had happened and told her that it needed to end. Even at this point, I did not want to send this man home. Was it shock? Denial? Probably a mixture of the two or some other additional emotional responses. She gets up after some discussion and goes downstairs, promising to shut him down, but comes back about 15 minutes later, sobbing. I couldn't do it. I couldn't end it. Side note. In my confused haze of a mind, I feel personally threatened. And after she leaves the bedroom, I lock the door and grab a metal water cup. I keep at my side and prepare to actually fight if it comes to it, but once she returns, I back off that idea again. By talking with her more, I present her with 2 options: couples therapy or divorce. Both of these options are world-ending to her, and she even goes so far as to suggest that just because I said the D word that it was what I wanted, which was objectively untrue. We talk back and forth about things I don't quite recall at this point. Aside from one point where she comes back and locks herself in the master bath and tells me to call 911. She doesn't care because she's going to take a bunch of pills. But after a couple of hours, Z shows up to the door and knocks and asks if he can come in. I tell him he may enter, and we talk for a bit. After about 5-ish minutes, we decide to go downstairs to the living room and continue the discussion. Once I sit down on the sofa, I immediately feel like I'm being positioned as the bad guy. I'm in the corner of our sectional, and she's on my left. He's on my right. She tells him he said it's either a divorce or couples therapy. Oh, so he gave you an ultimatum? I continue to argue that yes, those are the 2 only options. Z tells me you're not being fair to her emotions. She's telling you there's another option. I am thoroughly baffled at this statement. D. I didn't think it was possible, and I didn't mean for it to happen, but I have fallen in love with another man. My heart has room for 2. I truly have 2 soulmates. I have never been happier than sleeping on the couch next to my 2 boys. Z. There is no reason you guys can't stay married, and we can explore what we found. I mean, look at how happy she has been since I've been here. Sick to my stomach, I get up to go vomit in the toilet. Now I wore a silicone wedding ring, and often find even with a hand wash, a little water tends to get trapped under it. After I finish and wash myself up, I come back and am playing with my ring to dry it. She sees this as a sign that I'm uncomfortable again wearing my ring, and takes off her ring as I sit back down and hands me her wedding ring. But me, excuse me? D, this is what you want, I can tell. Me, no. I was washing my hands and water gets stuck under my ring. D, oh, I thought, okay. And she takes back her ring from me. I tell her very clearly the options are to either end things with him or end things with me. At this point, I'm still in shock, but sober in mind enough to decide that this is not worth fighting over. I will not argue with my own wife my merits, or why she shouldn't just pack up and leave with a jobless, now essentially a homeless man, and if she cannot figure that out herself, then I will eventually move on. Crying, sobbing, she sits down in front of him and says, "I'm so sorry. I fought for you. I really did. I told you I'd fight for you and I failed. I loved being your girlfriend, but I need to be a good wife and stay." C says, "All right," and starts to go gather his things to leave. As he does, she grabs him and says, "No, wait, please don't go. I don't know what I want." Z: "Okay, well, if we're getting all this out in the open, I want to say this. I love this girl. I love her with my whole heart, and without her, life is not worth living. I will not leave this house if you may. Tell me to only her. You are taking this very well right now. I can tell you want to hit me." Still in shock, now I can genuinely say that emotion or thought had not actually registered outside of the event upstairs earlier. But this is my stand. D: "Up. We had a good run. I'm sorry." And with that, I get up and go to get my sandals and leave the house to get some air. As I try to go, she runs to the door and he follows her. She pushes the door closed and says, "No, wait. Please. Me. No. This is the deal. I'm going out to get some fresh air. I am not threatening self-harm to win you back." D: "Will you be back?" Me: "I don't know." Z: "Man, I'm telling you, you don't understand. You think I am your enemy, but I am not." And with that, I leave and shut the door. In the hour I am gone, I drive around near the house, and I call my supervisor, who I have a very good relationship with. And I did not want to involve direct friends or family yet because I'm afraid it's too early to start spreading this news. I go over to her house nearby and we chat shortly. After our talk, I have at least something of a clear head and go home with words for both of them. As I arrive home, there's no one downstairs. I go upstairs. His door is closed. I knock on the door. Z: 1 second. I wait for about 5 agonizing seconds, but I refuse to be shut out of rooms in my own home and open the door. He is shirtless, and she is hiding in the corner just out of sight of me. I look him in the eye. Me: "Really?" Z: "Yup, me. Get out of my house." And with that, they both silently pack their things and leave. The second I hear the front door close, I start calling people. I am not above pettiness, and the first person I call is her mom, who I have a good relationship with. She's shaken and immediately calls her. I find out later that it was a particularly harsh verbal beating by her, but it really doesn't change anything. When I come downstairs to check the state of the house, I see her wedding ring on the counter. I call out of work the next day and lay down and hope I die. Part 4. Her problems. So there is some additional context that I did not add in part 1 because a lot of it is red flags I ignored over the course of our relationship that, in the days following, started to become more and more obvious. There are many that I spent much effort playing off or covering her for, but I will try to briefly list much of what I see as glaring issues in the relationship that were never remedied. This woman is 30 years old and cannot drive. She can drive and has driven my vehicle at the start of the relationship, albeit illegally, but after one tiny little accident where she hit a pole and knocked my side mirror off, which she paid for and fixed before telling me it really wasn't a big deal. I was on deployment. She never drove again. Attempts to get her behind the wheel would end very quickly after they started, and the conditions to get her in the seat were often extremely time limited, scheduled, or something would come up. And every time I told her, "Okay, this month we're getting your license for sure," it just wouldn't happen, and I'd end up feeling like the one who was at fault. She does not have her bachelor's degree because she did not turn in her final project for one single class. Not only that, but she's never truly pursued a career with the things she learned from the coursework, or even used her AI. For half of the relationship, she did not work at all. When she did, it was often part-time work, and if she was saddled with full-time hours, or, God forbid, overtime, it was a world-ending affair. She would come home and constantly be tired from her few hours at work and would do little more than sit around and crochet. Our agreement when we bought our house was that she was going to work full-time and we were going to split household duties, but I would definitely scoop the cat box because she was allergic. But she wanted cats, and wash dishes because she hated them, and she would do laundry because I hated it. In practice, all her version of laundry turned out to be was to throw loads in when one of us was out of clothes and just hit wash and then rotate, and then leave all the clothes in a pile on the bed. Everyone knows folding the laundry is the worst part. Come on, men's clothes are easy. I don't wear that much. When we would fold, I often finished in a third of her time and would just hang out and chat until she was done. Ultimately, this meant that for many years now, she was working barely more than part-time if she was working at all, and would sort of do laundry. Meanwhile, I'm scooping litter, folding laundry, doing dishes, doing all related yard work, doing all the household cleaning, handling all the finances. I did most of the cooking and all of the grocery shopping, often going alone, driving her from work if I could. She'd Uber it if not, and picking her up and driving her home, as well as just generally being a chauffeur for her for 10 years while working a full-time job and a side gig online. Many nights, I'd have to stop what I was doing to pick her up at closing hours, and then would sit in the parking lot for 30 minutes while she did tasks like vacuum, her little crystal shop that she definitely could have done before close, so I didn't end up waiting so damn long. Then we'd come home, hang out, and eat while we watched TV, and then if I wanted to try and go upstairs to do another hobby, I'd be silently guilty about it because she wanted to sit on the couch and crochet. Part 5. My problems. I am not perfect, and admit I have flaws. One of her favorite things to claim to our friends now is that I was emotionally neglectful, and if there is truth to it, I think I can pin down the day. Before I started working full-time again, I was going to school on the 9-11 G-bill. I was not a good student in my younger years, but in time, I have become rather good at school. My first 2 semesters back, I easily maintained a 4.0 GPA. Over the summer in 2022, I woefully decided to take the Calc 2 class online because I could not find one in person and wanted to be ready for Calc 3 in the fall to fill a pre-req for my bachelor's. And I really liked the instructor for that Calc 3 class. This Calc 2 class was painful. The instructor had clearly recorded all his lectures during COVID, and we were simply given the full course of videos and given work assignments and said, email me if you have questions. This is not how I learn, but I figured, hey, it's one class, I'm working again. But one class isn't a huge deal. I can knock this out. I was wrong. After the second exam, I had a low C in the class and I knew I couldn't keep up. I withdrew from the class, feeling no other option. I tend to be pretty good at math, and ultimately my dream was to work with 3D printing on an industrial scale with a mechanical engineering degree. And if that failed, I had my military history, which is engineering relevant, and a degree to fall back on and work should come easily. After clicking that withdraw button, I saw those dreams vaporize. After that, I threw myself into my government civilian job full-time and slowly fell into depression. By the end of our relationship, with a toll of doing 99s of the work around the house, and for her and with my dreams dead and buried at age 33, I would wake up and pray I died. I would never kill myself, but I wanted to just die. I felt backed into a corner. I still did everything I could to support her and hoped that one day she would pick up some of the load and maybe, just maybe, I could go back. But that day did not come, at least not in the way I expected. Part 6. The aftermath? This post is already too long, and if I include every single detail that has come to light since, I might actually hit the post cap. But I will go over at least some of it here. I have had my friends come out in droves. Both of them have been effectively exiled, at least from what I can see, from every friend circle we have. After a couple of days, they flew back to live with, I guess, his parents in Vegas while they sorted shit out, because after I spoke with Z's previous roommate, he adamantly explained he was tired of all the fucking drama that Z had been bringing to the house and was just done with it. I have spoken with many people and gotten even more context and even receipts of some of each of their conversations to our mutual friends. And some of the shit I read is just hilarious. He's not ashamed of pursuing happiness. He's just sad that people got hurt. She's coming to terms with emotional neglect and felt trapped. But now, yes, now, she's free. I got my neighbors to watch the cats and took my dog up to visit my closest friend of 20 years and spent about a week and a half drinking, smoking, and talking about all this while surrounded by some of the most beautiful nature the U.S. has to offer. Truly, without this man, I don't think I'd have gotten this far as quickly as I have. He really has been a lifesaver, and I truly, to my dying day, will always appreciate him. Paperwork has been filed. We wish to remain on good terms. And one day, I still do hope I can be a friend to her. But she's woefully immature and incapable of adequately performing in an adult society. I have quit my job and am returning to school with a much lighter budget and will be getting that degree I desperately need. It's been hard, real hard. I have put every ounce of my being into this relationship, and I truly felt like she was part of me, and nothing like this could ever happen. But it's that trust that allowed this to happen. I do not hate her. I'm just disappointed. I will pick up my pieces and hopefully find myself whole again soon. Part 7. Rambling anecdotes. These are some stories I wanted to include in the previous body of text, but didn't feel like it kept the same flow. If there even is any at all, I'm not proofreading this. If I remember any others after I post, I'll just toss them in the comments. And early after Z came to live with us, my mother came to the house to drop off a package. I'm pretty sure I was at work, but when my mother came to the door, both of them answered the door in the way my mom describes it first of all. Do you answer the door at your friend's house? Also, the way he hovered over her made me uncomfortable. They were in the doorway and he was right up behind her poking his head out. She said my wife had told her that I was feeling unwell and was upstairs sleeping. I can't even be sure at this point. Shortly before all the things happened, my parents were going out of town to celebrate their own anniversary, and I had agreed to sit their 5-month-old puppy, who, while cute, has way too much energy and was extremely difficult to handle. And I have raised several dogs at this point. We met up and took the dog, and then all of us, including Z, went to dinner. At dinner, my mother looked at my wife and asked directly, and so, how long have you been married? 6, almost 7 years. Well, at least you missed that 7-year itch. Huh. And my wife shortly followed with a comment about how she was not hungry and did not eat dinner that night. All of this happened while this crazy puppy was running around the house, and part of me thinks he pushed this to happen when it did because he could not stand having to help take care of this dog any longer. 2 days. About a week after all this happened, my wife did not text or call me or respond to any messages or emails I sent her. I didn't send many, but they exist. Frustrated, I text her and tell her I need to talk to her about logistics moving forward, specifically about her belongings. She told me I will talk to you when I'm ready. We did not talk for another week. Also, she told me to stop talking to her mom. I have a good relationship with both of my in-laws, and while her stepfather tried to remain impartial to the best of his abilities, he gave me some of the best advice I could possibly have gotten at that time, mostly about how to move forward and cope, as he has personally dealt with this with smaller relationships 3 separate times in his life, which he gave me details on, and we are still on good terms. Their favorite TV show to watch together was Outlander, which, if you aren't aware, is basically a story about a woman who time travels and has 2 men in her life. One of our biggest constant points of contention was my friendship with an old high school buddy, who I spent much of the time in the aftermath hanging out with while healing. We believe, with good reason, that she hated this man because after I'd almost been hospitalized for psych reasons due to stress, he had told me I needed to talk to her about working again and doing more to help around the house. She figured out, obviously, who was telling me to say these things and sent a very, very angry text to his wife. They all apparently made up, but I know she never let that grudge go. One of the fairly recent hobbies I got into was Dirt. It seemed like a good fit for all of us. She loved fantasy and gaming. I enjoyed 3D printing and storytelling. She needed friends, and a party of people hanging out would give her at least a few connections to start. Every night she participated in Dade. She mostly sat quiet and did not do anything. Hell, I tried to get her to participate in 2 different games, and after she left the first one, she asked to just sit quietly in the Discord call. This first one was online only, second was in person, and listen, which was super awkward. In the in-person game, after 3 months of playing, she did not know how to play her character at all, and mostly spent her time at the table crocheting. My buddy even made a comment about how at one point he was proud of how good I was getting at DMing and I was giving particularly good exposition. And she interrupted me to hand another player at the table a dice bag she made. I don't remember it, but I absolutely believe this happened. The day of the incident, she had a meltdown about how a friend of hers had ghosted her. I told her it was okay. She was much younger anyway, and people grow apart. She's probably going through stuff, and we should respect that path she's on. She cried about how she has no friends. Also, the day of the incident, we were in the shower together, and she told me she had met her sister's new BF on FaceTime. I asked, why did she break up with her old one? Well, cheated on him. Oh, that's a shame. Cheating is probably the most cowardly act a person can do to another. If you're going to start a new relationship, you need to grow a pair and end it before starting a new one. She clearly took my words to heart. One of my biggest pet peeves about cleaning the house is our dog sheds a lot. If I see a hairball roll through the house, it immediately drains me a bit. We had a Roomba. She would send that thing home when it started and never started again. It barely ran. She would not vacuum. One of the most common descriptors of her I've heard used by many people now that they're allowed to is she was there, doing the thing with us, but it was like she wasn't there. Something she thought that I apparently hadn't figured out by the time we talked after everything happened was that they had been talking since February. I told her I wasn't stupid and had figured it out already, that this wasn't out of the blue. Z's wife is currently pregnant with the baby of the man she cheated on him with. And he is also married. Anything else I remember, I'll leave for comments. I know there's much, much more.